Mangwanani mwalelepo vukenjani qeqwa sivana Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. We certainly hope you enjoyed your Easter. You are joined by Ashwin Berry and Diana Master.
Good morning. Good morning, Africa. It is a lovely day because today is World Bicycle Day.
With these fuel prices, I appreciate that.
Definitely. When was the last time you rode a bike?
Maybe 2 years ago. Yes, yeah.
Okay. I'll take you on a bike date. All right. So given its name, you'd be forgiven for jumping to the conclusion that Bicycle Day is a celebration of the two-wheeled, pedal-driven, single-track vehicle. However, the adulation of Bike Day is actually reserved for World Bike Day. So you can put your helmet and Queen record away for a little while longer. Let's take a look at World Bicycle Day.
Today is Tuesday, the 19th of April, and these are your top stories. First off, bus crash kills 35 in Zimbabwe. 35 churchgoers have been killed in a bus crash in Zimbabwe. More than 70 others were seriously injured in the accident on Thursday night. The bus was carrying members of the Zion Christian Church who were on their way to an Easter service in the eastern town of Chipinge, where the vehicle veered off the road and landed in a gorge. Police spokesman Assistant Commissioner Paul Nyati said he thought the bus was overloaded. He added that the police try to discourage bus drivers from traveling at night. Correspondents say such accidents are common in Zimbabwe during public holidays when the roads are often busier. There are also many potholes which contribute to accidents.
KZN flood disaster, 6 more bodies found. South African authorities have found 6 more bodies amid ongoing rescue operations following devastating flooding in the country's east coast. KwaZulu-Natal Premier assured South Africans search missions were back in full swing despite having been impacted by extensive damage to the province. As of this morning, KwaZulu-Natal received 38 call-outs, and on the scenes that we attended, 6 bodies were recovered. We stand at approximately 63 persons missing or unaccounted for. The toll now stands at 443. Floodwaters engulfed parts of the southeastern coastal city of Durban and surrounding areas early last week, ripping apart roads, destroying hospitals and sweeping away homes and those trapped inside. Inanda, a rural township 30 kilometers from the city of Durban Central Business District, was one of the areas devastated by heavy flooding that has killed 443 people and left more than 40,000 homeless.
Now in our next story, Somalia one step closer to electing new president. The newly elected Somali parliament convened for the first time on Saturday with new legislators sworn in. The session sets the ball rolling for the election of the next president. The parliamentary elections should have been completed before the incumbent President Mohammed's term expired in February 2021. Elections in Somalia follow an indirect model where state legislatures and clan delegates pick lawmakers for the parliament, who in turn choose the president. The process being more than a year behind schedule, the interim speaker called for a speedy completion of the work. 298 legislators have taken the oath of office from a possible 329 members for both houses. If seats still remain unfilled, but sufficient lawmakers have been sworn in to move the election process forward. Political infighting stymied the process. President Mohammed tried to extend his rule by decree, but faced protests and violent opposition in Mogadishu, where rival political factions fought on the streets. A date for choosing the new president has not been set.
Moving over to Nigeria, Nigeria Army says 70 terrorists killed in air raid. The Nigerian Air Force says it has killed more than 70 ISIS-affiliated fighters in the north of the country at the border with Niger in an air raid. Saturday's statement said aircraft from Nigeria and Niger took part in the operation. The Lake Chad area, where Nigeria said it launched the air raid, is known for hosting fighters of the Islamic State West Africa province, an armed group active since 2016. With older rivals Boko Haram, the two factions have killed more than 40,000 people in the past decade. More than 2 million people are still displaced from their homes due to ongoing violence. Missions over the suspected locations conducted on 13 April 2022 specifically cited large number of terrorists, a likely logistics camp, Nigeria's Air Force spokesman said. As a result, they carried out air attacks on April 14 in Tamban, Rego, and a nearby training camp. Over 70 ISWAP terrorists were either eliminated or severely injured. A joint military force from Nigeria, Niger, and Cameroon said on Sunday it had killed more than 100 Islamist insurgents, including 10 commanders in the past few weeks, as ground and air offensive intensify in the Lake Chad region.
Now in our next story, over 20 wounded in New Jerusalem violence. More than 20 Israelis and Palestinians were wounded on Sunday in several incidents in and around Jerusalem's Flashpoint Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, 2 days after major violence at the site. The latest clashes take the number of wounded since Friday to more than 170, at a tense time when the Jewish Passover festival coincides with Ramadan. Early on Sunday morning, hundreds of Palestinian demonstrators inside the mosque compound started gathering piles of stones shortly before the arrival of Jewish visitors, police said. Jews are allowed to visit but not to pray at the site, also known as Temple Mount, the holiest place in Judaism and the third holiest in Islam. The police said its forces had entered the compound in order to remove the demonstrators and re-establish order. The Palestinian Red Crescent said 19 Palestinians were wounded with rubber-coated steel bullets, including at least 5 who were hospitalized. The United Nations has called for calm a year after clashes in and around the mosque compound escalated into an 11-day war between Israel and Palestinian militants in Gaza. All right, that brings us to the end of the first half of our top stories. More news after the break.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. Continuing with our top stories. Now in South Africa, funeral industry urged to stop creating false sense of alarm over backlog in KZN mortuaries. The KwaZulu-Natal government has dismissed reports that its mortuaries in the province are unable to cope with the amount of bodies coming in. KZN Premier Sihle Zikalala, during a briefing on Sunday, confirmed that more than 400 people, including one member of a rescue team, have lost their lives, while just over 60 people were missing following terrible floods in KwaZulu-Natal. Zikalala also said government is in control of the situation at the mortuaries. This is after reports suggested that government mortuaries, 2 of which are located in Durban, had a backlog in conducting post-mortems. With regard to mortuaries, we are in control of the situation through the Department of Health. We have completed 243 post-mortems and are left with 114 more to complete. He added that additional resources have been mobilized, including 7 doctors, to ensure that post-mortems are completely speedily in order to avoid congestion and to enable those who are grieving to bury their loved ones. The Premier said that officials were constantly monitoring the situation and sending bodies to facilities that have space. Zikalala urged the funeral industry to stop creating a false sense of alarm and to allow the forensic pathologists to do their work unhindered and to collect bodies that have been completed without delay. The National Funeral Practitioners Association of South Africa had previously called on the KZN government to release bodies without conducting post-mortems.
Now in our next story, Rwanda asylum critics have no solutions, says Patel. United Kingdom Home Secretary Priti Patel has hit back at critics of the government's plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda, saying they have failed to offer solutions. Patel said they had proposed an innovative answer to the deadly trade of people smuggling, adding that no humanitarian nation could allow that suffering to continue. This comes after Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Walby, said there were serious ethical questions about the plan. Patel and Rwanda's Foreign Minister Vincent Biruta said the global asylum system was collapsing under the strain of humanitarian crises and human trafficking, adding that the plan to transport some asylum seekers who enter the UK unlawfully to Rwanda, where they can apply to settle, will allow people fleeing persecution to find safety. Those sent to Rwanda will be provided with accommodation while their asylum claims are considered. If successful, they will be able to remain in the East African nation. Opposition parties and some conservative MPs have also criticized the plan, while more than 160 charities and campaign groups called it shamefully cruel and urged the Prime Minister and Ms. Patel to scrap it. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer described the scheme as unworkable, while the Liberal Democrats said the government was slamming the door in the face of refugees.
Moving over to our next story, Ukraine vows to fight to the end in Mariupol as Russian ultimatum expires. Ukraine on Sunday vowed to fight to the end in Mariupol after a Russian ultimatum expired for remaining forces to surrender in the Black Sea port city, where Moscow is pushing for a major strategic victory. The city still has not fallen. Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal said hours after Moscow's deadline had passed for fighters holed up and surrounded in a sprawling fortress-like steelworks to surrender. They're still our military forces, our soldiers, so they will fight to the end, he said. Moscow has shifted its military focus to gaining control of the eastern Donbas region and forging a land corridor to already annexed Crimea. Russia's defense ministry said there were up to 400 mercenaries inside the encircled steel plant, calling on Ukrainian forces inside to lay down their arms and surrender in order to save their lives. Moscow claims Kyiv has ordered fighters of the nationalist Azov battalion to shoot on the spot anyone wanting to surrender. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky said if Russian forces killed the remaining troops defending the city, it would end the peace talks. Russian President Vladimir Putin has already said the talks are at a dead end.
Now in our next story, we are in South Africa. 12 men arrested after shootout with police in Benoni. 12 armed men were arrested on Saturday afternoon after being involved in a shootout with police in Benoni. The shootout started after police foiled an armed robbery at a transport business. Members from Highway Patrol Johannesburg Flying Squad and the K9 unit proceeded to the scene, where they were met with gunshots from about 12 armed men. Police responded and a shootout ensued, said police spokesperson Mavela Masondo. 5 unlicensed firearms were also recovered. Preliminary investigation suggests that about 14 armed men arrived in a sedan and 3 trucks where they held the security guards at gunpoint. After police spotted the suspect's vehicle near the bottle store, 7 armed men were seen entering the premises on Thursday. As police were approaching, the suspects started shooting towards them and a shootout ensued.
Moving over, U.S. approves major sale of weapons to Nigeria. The U.S. has agreed to sell military equipment worth $997 million to Nigeria, including 12 attack helicopters and numerous advanced precision kill weapon system rockets. The equipment has been requested by Nigeria and would help to improve security in sub-Saharan Africa in line with U.S. foreign policy goals and shared security objectives, a statement from the U.S. Defense Security Corporation Agency said. The U.S. also said Nigeria will have no difficulty in acquiring the weapons, but the process is expected to take at least 5 years. It will include training Nigerian military personnel on how to use the equipment and on human rights to avoid harming civilians. Nigeria is struggling to tackle violence as extremist groups such as Boko Haram and the so-called Islamic State West Africa province, as well as worsening attacks by armed criminal gangs who carry out killings and kidnappings for ransoms. This is the second major arms sale to Nigeria by the U.S. in 5 years.
That brings us to the end of our top stories. Now, earlier we were talking about Somalia being very close to choosing a new president. However, the country is facing a humanitarian crisis, and it could be interesting to see how the new administration focuses on this humanitarian crisis of drought affecting millions in Somalia. And we're going to be zooming in particularly on that after the break on Africa Good Morning.
Have you received a loan from NSFAF? NSFAF loan is the same as any other loan. It must be paid and settled. NSFAF has a set of guidelines on how you can repay your loan and become debt-free. Therefore, it is important that you, a former beneficiary and a responsible Namibian, show your patriotism by helping pay back your loan and thus helping NSFAF become a revolving fund for the benefit of future potential students. By failing to pay back your NSFAF loan, you risk being blacklisted or having a court order against you. So arrange with the fund to pay back your loan today. For more information on how you can repay your loan, visit our website at www.nasfaf.na or visit our Facebook page or Twitter. Do the right thing and hashtag #paybackthemoney.
Now, as I highlighted just now, today's focus insert zooms in on the continued humanitarian crisis in Somalia, where millions of people are affected by severe drought. In 2011, famine killed an estimated 250,000 people. This report was compiled by the United Nations Assistance Mission in Somalia. Have a look.
A delegation of United Nations representatives visited Dolo in Somalia on the 13th of April to assess the humanitarian crisis here caused by continued severe drought. The delegation toured the town and met with residents of camps for internally displaced people at Kahari and Kabasa.
waa loo baahan yahay gargaar adduunyada wixii la haysto dhusuq oo dhammaaday wixii ka heray gargaar ay rabaan dadkina gargaaraas rabaa aniga aabbahay dhaliyo tanoo kaleba ma arkin 95 aan jira.
Dolo is located in Jubaland on the border with Ethiopia and has been hard hit by Somalia's current wave of drought. The UN has been working with district authorities and humanitarian partners to help those in need, but the outlook remains grim, with more people being displaced and seeking aid.
It is all part of our effort to bring this to the world attention. These people are looking at the threat of famine in the face. But without resources, we cannot scale up. We cannot help these people. I saw malnourished children who are struggling for breath, whose mothers are equally malnourished. The resources are not anywhere near enough. Everywhere you go, look at these people behind me. All of them are new arrivals. 400 families arrived in the past 2 weeks alone in this single IDP camp, and there are many around Dolo.
The delegation met with the local district commissioner, members of Dolo's drought committee and community leaders. They also visited the local clinic run by ChoCare, a non-governmental organization, as well as a school for displaced children. Children under 5 are among the most vulnerable. Around 1.4 million children face acute malnutrition, with around a quarter of them, or 330,000 children, facing severe acute malnutrition. Previously, up to 85% of Somalia's wheat imports came from Russia and Ukraine. That has stopped, leading to price increases of 160% in just 1 month. The conflict there, as well as other crises in Ethiopia's Tigray region, Yemen, and Afghanistan, has also drawn away attention.
He will get better. You can see his hair is growing back. You can see his swelling is going. And he's even got a ball to play with. Funding's everything. I mean, we have the expertise, we have the people, we have the communities who do it for themselves. But what they need are the supplies. So the money is for the supplies. It's for plum peanut. It's for in severe cases, special milk for severely malnourished. You need the chlorine tablets. You need to truck the water. You need all of those things. We need recreation kits for children. They need to play. They need to have a childhood.
I know that the world is very much occupied by Ukraine, but human suffering is human suffering, no matter whether in Europe or Asia or Africa. And here we have to uplift, to live to our moral values. And our moral values, humanity matters. If we are not responding now and we are not increase our response, those people will be heading to famine, and that is not acceptable.
Somalia is facing the risk of famine as a combination of poor rainfall, skyrocketing food prices, and huge funding shortfalls leaves almost 40% of Somalis, around 6 million people, facing critical levels of food insecurity. Somalia's humanitarian response plan for 2022 seeks close to $1.5 billion to cover the estimated costs of providing support for those in need, but so far only 4.4% of that amount has been received.
We cannot really overemphasize the fact that the drought situation is getting worse, and we're actually moving from a drought response now into a prevention of famine. So it is getting more intense, it is getting more severe, it's getting more acute. And of course, all of the indicators are that this situation will get a little bit more severe because, one, we are expecting probably the fourth failed rain season.
The UN plans a high-level fundraiser for Somalia later this month in Geneva.
Choose your flex package with Paratus today. Sign up for ultra-fast fiber with the convenience of mobile LTE. That's 2 products in 1 bundle. It's new, it's 1 bill, and you can stay connected in more than 1 location.
For more information, visit paratus.africa/NA.
Always prepared. Paratus.
Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. Now we all know the impact COVID has had on economies, families, and just the world in general. Now, until recently, UNICEF released a report detailing the world's post-COVID recovery and specifically the place that children hold in this world. We take a look at the predictions and estimates for collective recovery by UNICEF. Let's take a look at this video compiled by Irene Marie van der Walt.
Okay, so good morning to everybody in studio. It's so great to be back on Africa Good Morning. So this morning I'd like to discuss a report by UNICEF called Outlook 2025, or in line with Outlook 2025, my apologies, where UNICEF looks at the world's post-COVID recovery and especially specifically at the effect that this may have on children. So in this report, UNICEF starts off strong by naming COVID the biggest disruption to progress for children in modern history. It's a 29-page report that notes that child hunger, the suspension of immunization, and the closing of schools has had severe adverse effects on children worldwide. So the suspension of immunization campaigns has set back immunization coverage by roughly 20 years by UNICEF's estimates, and roughly 1 billion children have been affected globally by the constant closures of schools due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So UNICEF does look forward and does look at how we are going to sort of recover from the pandemic and how we are going to live our lives post-COVID-19. And UNICEF expects that countries obviously will first make an exit from the pandemic before they will actually start showing progress in real recovery. So the rollout of vaccines is expected to take roughly 3 years, but this is quite an optimistic estimate because it is based on supply factors. It's not based on information factors, it's not based on religious and cultural factors, which means that it will probably take longer, given that we've seen a lot of misinformation, we've seen a lot of, again, religious and cultural factors hampering people from getting vaccinated against COVID-19. So this two-tier recovery that UNICEF envisions for countries, to nobody's surprise, will see richer countries exit and recover at a faster pace. Later we will discuss how the quicker and the earlier a country makes its exit from the COVID-19 pandemic, the quicker the recovery phase will be. So just to give you a little bit of insight here, at the beginning of December 2020, this is back to vaccines, at the beginning of December 2020, 7.3 billion vaccines had been purchased and pre-purchased for a 7.8 billion global population. High-income countries saw an average of 3 doses per capita. Middle-income countries had bought half a dose per capita, and low-income countries had bought 0.3 doses per capita. So obviously, again, the longer a country takes to exit from the COVID-19 pandemic, the longer its recovery is estimated to take. This being for multiple reasons, but a historic, epic disinvestment will, according to UNICEF, lead to the Sustainable Development Goals, and especially in terms of the development of children being set back and unfortunately being pushed outside of our reach. So now is also a good time for UNICEF to take a step back and to assess where the world is at. We cannot assess our recovery and our exits if we don't know what we are recovering from and where we need to recover. So as a result of the pandemic, we've seen that half of all African firms are currently unprofitable due to the pandemic. The rating agency Standard & Poor's has also degraded nearly 60% of the Latin American companies that they assess. The economic effects of the pandemic have also disproportionately affected women, and sectors led by female business owners have specifically been hit the hardest. So if you look at previous crises, looking at the Ebola crisis, for example, women were also disproportionately affected in the recovery from that crisis. A year after the Ebola crisis had ended, 63% of men had returned to work, where 63% of men who had their work affected by the Ebola crisis had returned to work, with only 17% of their female counterparts. So once again, UNICEF is expecting to see a situation very, very similar to that play out. But obviously the future is up to us, and we get to decide how we're going to handle it. This time around, though, governments have been notable in their post-pandemic efforts. So the social assistance globally has expanded to include roughly 22% of the world population. This is emulant and mirrors very well the situation in the 1918 Spanish influenza, when governments embraced socialized medicine. And then in the long term, contrary to what you may believe, and in a contrast to the early 2000s, the last decade has seen a slowdown of globalization. This has also been accompanied by a shift in sentiment against the integration of economies. So UNICEF projects and expects globalization to stay stagnant for the next 5 years. Global companies on average expect a disruption to their supply chains every 3.7 years, but have not shifted towards unshoring and reshoring their supply chains. They have instead opted to diversify their supply chains. This is something that we saw in the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, when our supply chains were initially affected. Our businesses sat with quite a dilemma of whether or not they are going to reshore their supply chains, but instead they have diversified. So this is expected to stay the same. There's also a further shift expected in the range of services that will be traded across borders. The average working man and woman is expected to work from home and to do so more effectively and more cost effectively. And then the recovery of migration will slowly and unequally, unfortunately, taking place, with obviously the preference for skilled workers instead of lower level, lower class, unskilled workers. This obviously has very adverse effects on children, because as the options and opportunities and chances, I guess, to migrate become less, the will to migrate and the necessity to migrate doesn't lessen. It doesn't deter migration at the end of the day. So this will lead the poorer end of the world population to unfortunately have to follow informal channels to migration into better opportunities, which will put not just the adults but also the children very much in harm's way.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. Now, if you're like Diana and myself, you're hoping for an Africa Good Day. And the first step to take is to watch the weather forecast. Up next. It is Tuesday, the 19th of April, and you are still with Africa Good Morning. Now, universal health coverage means that all people can obtain the health services they need without suffering financial hardship. UHC, however, does not only improve health, it reduces poverty, it creates jobs, drives inclusive economic growth, promotes gender equality, and protects populations from epidemics. Let's take a look at this insert compiled by the World Health Organization.
"2030. It sounds like years away, but the clock is ticking. Time is short, and we have a promise to keep. A promise to ensure all people and communities in all countries receive the health services they need when and where they need them without facing financial hardship. But there's still a lot of work to do. At least half of the world's people lack full coverage for essential health services. More than 800 million people spend over 10% of their family budgets on health services, and close to 100 million people are pushed into extreme poverty because of healthcare expenses. We cannot accept a world like that. We cannot afford a world like that. That's why countries all over the world are investing in universal health coverage by enabling communities to make decisions about their own health, like breastfeeding, healthy diets, and bed nets. By reaching the most remote villages with life-saving services like vaccines, by building networks of affordable primary care clinics to provide treatment locally for everyday health needs, and by providing more sophisticated services at hospitals for life's ups and downs. The thing is, universal health coverage not only improves health and increases life expectancy, it also reduces poverty, creates jobs, drives inclusive economic growth, improves gender equality, and protects countries against epidemics. With investments, every nation can increase its range of health services, expand its health workforce, improve its infrastructure, ensure essential medicines are available, and protect people from the cost of paying for care out of their own pockets. We call on the global community to make universal health coverage a political priority so everyone can access quality healthcare without facing financial hardship. If we work together, we can make universal health coverage a reality and ensure a safer, fairer, and healthier world for all.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Let's get into your economic news stories. We start off in Tunisia as oil pumping operations to begin after shipwreck. The Equatorial Guinea flagged oil tanker Shello, which sank Saturday along Tunisia, has been checked with divers, finding no leaks from the fuel-laden ship. The Tunisia branch of the World Wildlife Fund had also expressed concern about another environmental catastrophe in the region, an important fishing zone. The Shello was traveling from Egypt to Malta when it went down. Rabi El Majidi, Tunisian Minister of Transport, said on Sunday that rescue workers had checked during the operation that the valves were closed and the team of divers ensured they were sealed and intact. The crew had issued a distress call on Friday evening and sought shelter in Tunisian waters from bad weather before going down. Tunisian authorities rescued the 7-member crew, who received first aid and were moved to a hotel. An Italian ship specialized in cleaning up marine pollution will be sent alongside a team of divers to aid with efforts, an Italian official said. Tunisian officials are also investigating the itinerary of the tanker, which reportedly has Turkish and Libyan owners.
Moving over to our next story, rare $120 million rough ruby from Tanzania unveiled in Dubai. A rare rough ruby from Tanzania, dubbed one of the world's biggest, has gone on display for the first time ahead of an auction in the Gulf Emirate of Dubai. Never before seen in public, the gem will be offered on auction shortly after Ramadan. Described by Patrick Pilati, Managing Director of SJ Gold and Diamond, as the company's crown jewel, Burj Al Hamal is expected to attract strong interest given the GCC's growing appetite for investing in high-value, one-of-a-kind gems and jewelry pieces. The 8,400 carat stone, nicknamed Burj Al Hamal and weighing 2.8 kilograms, was mined in Tanzania and made its debut at a Dubai hotel last Friday as part of SJ Gold and Diamonds Callisto collection. The gem has been named Burj Al Hamal and is said to be one of the biggest rough rubies in the world, with Managing Director Patrick Pilati calling it among the rarest rubies ever found. He said the Tanzanian stone was not heated, meaning it has not been treated, so it's natural and that's why it's precious. Local reports have suggested the rough ruby with greenish and dark purple hues could fetch up to $120 million. However, even as the gem goes public for the first time, authorities in Tanzania are yet to say anything about how the current owner obtained it. The stone will be on display at different locations in Dubai for the next 30 days before going to auction. The 228.31 carat pear-shaped gem, which was mined and polished in South Africa more than 20 years ago, is the largest white diamond ever to come to auction. The diamond is expected to fetch over $30 million.
Now, Diana, if you don't see me on Africa Good Morning, I shall be at that auction making a bid.
Take one for the team.
Take one for the team. All right, let's move over to the next story. Protest forces Libya's national oil firm to close Al Fil field. Libya's National Oil Corporation has announced the suspension of production at a major oil field in the country's south, declaring a force majeure due to a protest at the site. Located some 750 kilometers southwest of Tripoli, the Al Fil field is jointly managed by the NOC and Italian energy giant ENI and produces about 70,000 barrels of oil per day. The field was already forced to close temporarily in early March when an armed group shut down valves delivering crude. On Saturday, the Al Fil field was subjected to arbitrary closure attempts due to the entry of a group of individuals and the prevention of the field workers from continuing production, the NOC said in a post on Facebook on Sunday. Declaring force majeure is a legal move that allows involved parties to free themselves from contractual obligations when factors beyond control, such as fighting or natural disasters, make meeting those obligations impossible.
Moving over, house prices set to decline in real terms for 7th years running. It is highly unlikely that real house prices in South Africa will decline for the 7th consecutive year in 2022 and continue to decline for another few years to come, according to a report by independent property valuation firm Road and Associates. According to the report, the housing market had a steady start in 2022, with nominal prices in the first 2 months growing by 3.8% year on year, slightly slower than the 4.2% growth for the full 2021. However, in real terms, house prices fell by about 2% so far in 2022 as inflation held steady at 5.7%. The picture for real house price growth is not rosy, says Erwin Road, CEO of Road and Associates. The property cycle is very long, 15 to 20 years, maybe even longer. Mortgage rates will be higher for the next few years because global interest rates are normalizing due to global inflation. In the fourth quarter of 2021, houses were on average on the market only about 8 weeks, the lowest since the pandemic started and well below the long-term average of 13 weeks.
That brings us to the end of our economic news stories. Up next, economic indicators.
Have you received a loan from NSFAF? NSFAF loan is the same as any other loan. It must be paid and settled. NSFAF has a set of guidelines on how you can repay your loan and become debt-free. Therefore, it is important that you, a former beneficiary and a responsible Namibian, show your patriotism by helping pay back your loan and thus helping NSFAF become a revolving fund for the benefit of future potential students. By failing to pay back your NSFAF loan, you risk being blacklisted or having a court order against you. So arrange with the fund to pay back your loan today. For more information on how you can repay your loan, Visit our website at www.nasfaf.na or visit our Facebook page or Twitter. Do the right thing and hashtag payback the money.
Thank you for staying with us. Now, if you're a sports lover, fear not, because we're heading over to Cape Town with Ari Holgard to give us the latest in sport. Good morning, Ari.
Yes, very good morning, Diane. Good morning, everyone. Yes, it was a long weekend, and then there's more time to play sports. So there's lots to talk about. And the first sport I can start with is soccer, or football, as some call it. It is in the FA Cup in Britain, or first maybe the Premier League. The Premier League continues. It is Liverpool and Manchester City that lead at the moment. There's just 1 point in it, and games coming up for Liverpool at the moment is Liverpool have two tough home games. They're playing against Manchester United and also a derby against Everton. And then it is Manchester City. The next game will be a home game against Watford. So 1 game, 1 point in it, a few games to go, so all to play for. In the FA Cup, that's Sadio Mane. That was big result from the weekend. Sadio Mane scoring there for Liverpool against Manchester City. That was significant because it was Liverpool that beat Manchester City in the semi-final of the FA Cup, and they beat them by 3-2 to go through to the final on the 14th of May. And there they will face Chelsea. Chelsea beat Crystal Palace in the other semi-final by 2-0. Apologies. Then on to some tennis news. That was the Monte Carlo tennis tournament, Monte Carlo Masters, that was played. It's the play season that's starting, and that is the player that ended up second, unfortunately. He had a brilliant tournament. Alejandro Davidovich Fokino is his name. He's from Spain. He played against Stefanos Tsitsipas in the final, and it was Tsitsipas from Greece that won the final in the end 6-3 and 7-6. There is Tsitsipas. He defended his title successfully, and so he's the winner again. A great win for him. In the semi-final, he beat Alexander Zverev, the second seed, that is Tsitsipas, and then Fokina, a great result for him in the first round. He knocked out Novak Djokovic. And then on to some rugby news. There was some sevens rugby that I can report on, and that is the Fijian team playing again. Nice to see Fiji, Samoa, and New Zealand playing again in the sevens series. And it is Argentina that beat Fiji in the final. That was a bit of a surprise. Argentina, their first win since 2009, 13 years ago when they won in San Diego. Brilliant achievement by them. For them, it was a full house strong. All the teams played, and they beat Fiji in the final 29-10. In the bronze medal game, it was Australia that beat Samoa by 21-19. And South Africa, the Blitzboks, not a good tournament, but they came in fifth, beating New Zealand in the playoff for fifth position. Then on to Oceans running news. It was the Two Oceans Ultra Marathon that took place on Saturday that was in Cape Town. And that is the winner there of the women's division, that is Gerda Steyn. Just a few seconds after she finished the 56-kilometer run ultra marathon, and that was significant because it was a new course record that stood for 33 years. It was a legendary Frith van der Merwe's record she ran in 1989. So it was Gerda Steyn that won in a time of 2 hours, 29 minutes. So 3 hours, 29 minutes and 42 seconds. A long time to be on the road. Brilliant achievement by her. She beat the old record by about 54 seconds. Her third consecutive win in the 56-kilometer ultra marathon. Second place in the women, it was Yvette van Zyl, and she also beat the record by a few seconds. That is Andale Belachau. He is from Ethiopia, giving the thumbs up, and he was the winner of the men's section. He was the winner of the men's section, and he won in a time of 3 hours, 9 minutes and 5 seconds. His first ultra marathon, he said, he's a marathon runner, his first ultra marathon, and he won. So great achievement by him. Just to finish off some golf news for the golf lovers, it was the RBC Heritage Championship game or tournament that was played, and that is Jordan Spieth. He played in playoff against Patrick Cantley. They both finished on 13 under, and it was Spieth that came out as winner. Jordan Spieth winning in the end. They both found the bunker on the 18th. He could up and down. It was Kately that couldn't up and down from the bunker. So it was Jordan Spieth there, the proud winner with his trophy, winning the RBC Heritage Championship that was played in Hilton Head. The next tournament will be the Zurich New Orleans Open that is going to be played in New Orleans in the USA. So that's the international sports news. Lots to talk about, and hope you had a great long weekend and a sport weekend. And we talk about it soon. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Ari, for bringing us all the pertinent stories from the sporting world. And thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. We'll be bringing you your highlights after the break.
Now, in case you missed it earlier, let's take a look at the highlights. Bus crash kills 35 people in Zimbabwe. KZN flood disaster, 6 more bodies found. Somalia one step closer to electing new president. Nigeria army says 70 terrorists killed in air raid. Over 20 wounded in New Jerusalem violence. Tunisia oil pumping operations to begin after shipwreck.
That brings us to the end of the broadcast. Of course, you can check out a repeat on our television channel, DSTV channel 285 and oneup2.com from 8:30. And speaking of DSTV, you can catch us every weekday on DSTV channel 285 and Gotv channel 94. And if you have some video clips, some interesting stories, something you'd like to share with us, by all means, do DM us on Facebook and Twitter on Africa Good Morning. From me, Ashwin Berry, and Diana Master, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again, same time, same place tomorrow. Swera Jaganaka.